Welcome to the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing Podcast with your host, Mike DeHaan and Dan Austin. From wins, losses, horror stories, and tactics for optimizing your business, Mike and Dan take a real, uncensored deep dive into the ins and outs of running a full-time real estate investment and wholesaling business.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 4 of the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing Podcast. My name is Mike DeHaan. I am here with Dan Austin. And how you doing, Dan?
It's been a good week. It's been a busy week.
Yeah. I mean, it's at the week. This has been the most turbulent week of. I feel like it really emphasizes the insanity of running a full-time wholesale business like this and the kind of people that we work with. Sorry about that. Just got on top of this crazy week. Just got a phone call from our acquisitions manager who was out at a house and got attacked by a dog.
Oh, nice.
So that's fun. Yeah, that's just the cream on top of the week. He's okay. Didn't get bit, but he said he tried to approach his property, go knock on the door, and hasn't really been able to get to the door because there's a crazy dog in the yard that attacked him. And so he said he's been calling the seller. The guy hasn't answered, but they were able to go around the side yard and look in the window, and the house is a complete gut job. So now the asking price that the guy has is extremely off what it was anyway. So anyway, that's just the current situation of our stuff. And then, as I was going to before, we had the most insane situation that we've ever had in this business, where a seller in a pretty rough property, pretty rough situation, was signing with a mobile notary, and another investor, I still don't know who this person was, some kind of other wholesaler investor, basically kicks in the door to the neighbor's house where the seller is signing and proceeds to pretty much abduct the seller of the property because he wanted to buy it instead. And when realtors complain that investors make too much money, I'm going to say, when was the last time your seller was abducted from a signing? But here's the fucked up thing is James and Judd and our guys went back there today trying to track him down. Nobody's seen him. They don't know where the seller is. So they called the cops and stuff. I should be laughing because it's terrible. Because literally nobody knows where this guy went. He has disappeared.
Wow. So this is our first official kidnapping. Wow. Yeah, this is a complex situation. I mean, maybe those squatters did something too. There were known squatters on this property. I'm wondering if they have them tied up in the garage.
Yeah, I mean, honestly though, I don't know. And then they called the cops. Crime Check is investigating it, but it's also tough too because of this type of situation and this neighborhood. The cops are like, well, these people they just go wandering about sometimes, and so they're not taking it seriously at all. I don't know. It is super, super wacky. But we were literally about to sign, it was a little wholesale deal for us. It's a terrible property, in terms of just condition in a very rough part of town. And the problem is a lot of complexities came because the owner has been taken advantage of by a bunch of squatters who are living in his garage, who he's terrified of, and he wants to get out of the property, but they're basically not allowing him to sell it. And we're talking to James, our sales guy, he's pretty sure that, the squatters were privy to this other person. And so I guess the details on this other person, roundabout way, I found out he had a contract to buy this property back in August and failed to execute on it and has been trying to figure it out, but he's just, I don't know, he was a rookie. He can't figure out how to put together a purchase. I'm guessing that the squatters alerted him because for him to roll up literally mid-signing makes no sense. That is too coincidental.
Yeah.
Situation.
Very coincidental. Very weird too.
Super weird. And to just come in and be hyper aggressive like that. He was our dispositions guy was out there, his young guy. He's not overly intimidated by people, I don't think. But when somebody comes in and they got the crazy eyes and they're now manhandling your seller, and then I know, and then on top of that, there's the poor notary who's a legal professional that was just there and was just like, oh my God. And so our escrow company called me after and chewed me out for even having the mobile notary go to this place. And I was like, what else are they supposed to do?
Right.
Like, I don't know. If she doesn't feel safe, then say that and we can meet somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah. It's like, it's so ridiculous. You know,
Yeah.
it's like tragic, like, but it's also insane. Like, I don't know what to think about it. So
yeah, well,
yeah.
I hope it closes. I hope we find the guy.
Well, honestly, I hope the guy's okay.
Yeah,
Like, I have no idea. You know, and as also bet you do, he's about to lose all of his equity in his property because he's going to tax foreclosure anyway.
Oh, man, yeah, this is tough.
So, you know, basically now these squatters are making it guaranteed so that he's going to be walking away with nothing because they're not allowing him to buy his property because they're trying to be terrible people.
Gosh, there's a lot of other garages they could squat in. It's not like the market's limited or capped anywhere. I mean,
yeah,
golly.
it's not like there's a lack of space or empty lots.
You can just show up too. You can just show up and pull up with all your crap. Yeah, you can do that anywhere.
Yeah. And well, and the thing that sucks too is before all this went down, we kind of like sensed the issue there. So we called called Crime Check, called the police to try and be like, hey, these people are like causing a major menace in this neighborhood. Like that, you know, they are causing all sorts of problems. And they were basically just like, well, do you own the property? And we were like, no, not yet. We're trying to. And they're like, okay, well, until you own it, we can't do anything. And so basically the current owner had to call the police. But, you know, this particular social class, right, like, you know, is from the kind of upbringing where he's had run-ins with the police his whole life. He's never going to call the police.
Yeah.
You know, he's the kind of guy, like, if you have a problem like that, you deal with it. You don't get the law involved. So, yeah, I don't know.
Wow.
And it sucks too, because like we've kind of got to know the neighbors across the street a little bit and like these other areas, and they were just like, please figure out this house. Like, you know, they're getting their stuff broken into, getting stolen all the time, and now we're literally not going to be able to because these people have these insane protections here, and there's just nothing that can go on about it. So
I have faith. We'll figure it out.
Maybe.
Well, I have faith. We're good.
Assuming he's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. So
That's true.
yeah. So that's been my last like 24 hours because that all started conspiring yesterday, and it's been just like a whirlwind with that. So yeah.
There's a lot of good wins this week too, though. We're looking good.
Oh yeah. We got a great new wholesale deal while this was going on with our dispo guy in that transaction. Our sales guy locked up a great one, which we ended up joint venturing with actually our main competitors. And, you know, people always get kind of funny about that. Like, why would you split something that way? But when it's a situation where the seller's pretty educated and they're trying to basically text the other company's offers, you know, by text the company's offers to each other, trying to get them to bid up. If you're ever a motivated seller, realize we all know each other. We're smarter than that, you know, and that's kind of the route he was going. And we the other company called me pretty quick, and we decided basically just to agree on like a lower price. And they actually pulled out of the race for it, and we were able to get it signed around at a price that left plenty of room for us to get it signed around. We got that one assigned today. So we'll be doing pretty good on that, even though it is a 50-50 split. And
let's just agree this is not an antitrust violation. This is just the business.
Yeah, totally, 100%. Yeah, definitely just the business. But, well, I guess what do you mean by that?
Well, you know, antitrust, right? So it would be like colluding with competitors to set prices and all that stuff.
It's not setting prices if it's a one-on-one transaction. And also too, we technically didn't set the price. They withdrew their offer.
Yeah. No.
As a reward for withdrawing their offer, we decided to split the proceeds with them.
Yeah. And that, well, I mean, it just speaks to also that this part of the industry is not regulated by that, right? You know, and it's good for business.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I mean, also too, one of the big things that I think a lot of people don't understand in this business, especially when they're getting started, is, you know, because it's not regulated, it's easy to have poor ethics and a lot of stuff that you do. And, in this, I wouldn't like in this sort of situation, we say have poor ethics with the seller. I was like, I don't know. He was bidding us against each other, right? That's like us
Yeah.
using our advantage. But I think the bigger thing is it emphasizes the importance of making sure you're doing right by other investors and other companies,
Yeah. Well, and
and that
everybody in general, right? Like your point
totally.
is really valid because it's like, so nobody wins here because that's essentially what happens in those
Mhm.
situations, right? Nobody wins,
Yeah, exactly. And
honestly.
and then even from like the seller standpoint, right? If they end up getting at like a higher price, but then somebody's not able to close now because that price is too high because
Hmm.
people in the heat of the moment bid it up, and now it's a loss for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll
Which I mean
just be
has
it'll be a 30-day delay before they find out that, oh, by the
Mhm.
way, we're not closing on it.
Yeah, which has happened. I mean, we've
Hmm.
been part of deals like that where we've seen it get bid up, and then we'll see it get sent out in like an email list, or we'll see it hit the market or whatever, and then it doesn't sell, and now the person has wasted a bunch of time and gotten their hopes up. And in some of those situations, people have like moved out of properties and that sort of stuff,
Hmm.
and now they're
Yeah.
back at square one. So it's I know it's interesting, but I know I'm curious how often that happens in like other markets. I feel like Spokane's pretty unique because there's only a handful of us businesses here that do the vast majority of the deals. And I feel like talking to people down in like Phoenix or Texas or things like that, it might be a lot more cutthroat. I feel like they wouldn't be sharing stuff like that.
Yeah,
But
maybe. Yeah. I mean, it
it's,
definitely seems like, because we got a pretty, well, we're 700,000, 800,000 people across our kind of area that we're operating in, right?
mhm.
North Idaho, Eastern Washington, kind of the greater Spokane area. Um, but it's pretty small town. And to your point, there's not that many competitors. We got a lot of people out there kind of doing this, but then the top competitors, we all know each other. And it's part of the real estate industry if you can get into a good group, right? Like
Yeah,
everybody wants to help each other. But yeah, I don't know that I've heard of other people
yeah,
purposely JVing deals in the market that they know. There's a lot of times you JV just because it's easy transaction and it's a
mhm.
benefit for you, but like a mutually beneficial, it's not always the case when it's like, okay, guys, let's step away, and like half of a deal is better than no deal.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I don't know. I feel like I'm sure realtors do that like a little bit. If somebody's like lists a lot of properties and there's somebody that has a lot of buyers and they like know that working with the other person is a super easy transaction, they're probably going to encourage
Oh,
their seller or their buyer to go with that
oh,
individual.
definitely happens, right?
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't do the retail space, but yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway, it's been a fascinating week. Um, Between that and then I feel like we had something else happen this week. But I can't remember what it was.
Yeah. Nothing as crazy as a kidnapping. I will tell you that
Yeah,
much.
I think
You
it's the
know,
problem is that
an
that just
alleged kidnapping. I don't want to throw
alleged.
anybody in the bus here, but
Seriously,
yeah.
just insane. But
Yeah.
yeah, so um, got our, I guess probably our largest official property under contract over this past weekend though,
Hmm.
with that 8 unit. So we're doing the inspection for that next Monday. I'd be curious to see how that one sort of comes together. Um,
Yeah,
the
this is a fun
problem,
one.
yeah,
This will be a fun one. Like, just because it's kind of treating it as a virtual. It's not that far from where we're at, but the way we're doing it,
mhm,
treating it as virtual. So like, this is like, how are we going to do the inspection? How are we going to do all these things virtually,
yeah,
so to speak?
yeah, and I mean it's a little 8 unit apartment complex. It's nothing too crazy, but it's just it's large enough that it's considered a commercial property. And I forget, everyone always says like the lending's easier, but once I start getting into it, I feel like it's easier if you have like if you're doing it traditionally and you have like a seller that's put together.
Hmm.
But even now, I've been talking to these different lenders and they're wanting all this stuff from the seller. And with how we market
Hmm.
to people that have recorded motivations, right? And it's like, well, I hate to break it to you, but this seller that we got off a bankruptcy list, their bookkeeping's really bad. Hence why they
Yeah.
were filing bankruptcy.
Yeah. Reading some of his messages, it's like,
I'm
I
like,
don't
oh my,
keep books. Like,
yeah.
oh, nice.
So then it's like, how the hell are we supposed to fund this thing, right? Because we go to get a typical commercial loan, and they want like tax returns, they're wanting P&Ls, so they can analyze the asset, which makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think this is why people have funds and like raise money and then look to refinance it after it's stabilized, right? Well, I
Yeah.
would think I know that's why they do it, but it's you know just such a different process. Whereas like at least with our residential stuff, you can run comps off of like kind properties. But this one too is kind of rural, so there's not really any other like little apartments like this up there.
Yeah, there's not going to be any really good comps. I don't think so. I mean, down a little bit further south, that talking to the property management company, there's some handful of decent like numbers of units, but how often have they changed hands? Who knows, right? Probably never, right?
Yeah,
20 years ago maybe. So yeah, that'll be tough. And then I also I feel like when you're working with a lender and if you're trying to do it traditionally and you're buying below market value, they're like, well, there's something wrong here. Like, what is it?
always.
Let me find what's wrong and then I'll deny you. But it's like,
I know,
no, like just like we're getting it below market value.
I know, right? Yeah, and then people never see it. They were like, well, why is he selling it for that? It's like, well, because we offered him that and he said yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why. Like, does there need to be more reason than that? Not necessarily. But yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I'm excited to get the inspection report back and see how it goes and see some photos of this place because we haven't even seen it. Like, we've seen the outside pictures, right?
Yeah,
like we know where it's at. We haven't actually been in it, so it'll be kind of cool to see these pictures and see where the value add's going to be on it. So
yeah, I mean, there's a couple options even right away. Cause like there's no laundry on site, right? So adding something like that is a potential benefit if you're able to figure out a way to do that. There's only a certain number of parking spots. Everyone else has like street parking. I think that he currently pays water, sewer. So if there's a way to sub-meter the water, that's kind of a traditional, like he'll break down expenses, which brings up that net operating income and then the value of it. So yeah, we'll figure it out. I think it'll be pretty good.
Let's call Thatch's son. He runs a coin-op laundry for all of his facilities. Let's see how do we get coin-op laundry in there, man?
I know, right? I always think that's so funny. Yeah, he's like, oh, this is my son's passive income. I was like, yeah, it's nice that you gave him 100-unit apartment complex to do that in. But I mean, I respect the hustle.
I do too. You got to learn somehow, right? And if you have afforded the opportunity, take advantage of it because you and I would.
Yeah, right. Yeah, for sure. But speaking of hustle though, that's when I was thinking about. So we have this Airbnb that we've been kind of stressing about getting the furniture figured out for, and I don't know how you found this person, but she basically came in, had like an idea, and offered to go and buy all the furniture, install all the furniture, do the whole thing for us for like a small fee, and like and it was like Airbnb specific too, which I feel like is the kind of distinction. Whereas like if you went and got like an interior designer, they're going to be doing like high end stuff, probably a lot more expensive. But I feel like if somebody wants to get involved in the real estate space and enjoys shopping and designing aspect of it, this is a great way to do it because we're paying her like a couple $1,000 or something.
Yeah,
$1,500. She could charge more than that. Don't ever listen to this and keep charging us that.
I hope she does not.
But yeah, so it's basically just go shopping with our credit card and buy a bunch of stuff, and we don't even have to worry about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's great, and it's cool we found her. And granted, she's probably working with us because she wants to break in and do this stuff, and we have other opportunities. And but yeah, it's just something like you and I, like that's not our specialty. I don't want to spend all this time shopping around. I don't know how to get the best deals on furniture. She has supplier discounts too and all that sort of stuff. And so when she came to us with a budget and it's just like, I text you, I was like, hey, what do you think? And you're like, yeah, let's do it. Right. And it is when you talk about the fee to do that. And like, we're basically, she's like, well, I have a lot of clients that want to pick colors. I'm like, this is what I told her. I said, I want to walk into that place and be amazed that it's already done. Like, that's all I care about. Like just do that. So when we're done, I can just put the key in the lockbox and it's ready to go. And so that is some cool hustle too. She's got, I think 3 kids, 3 like small kids, like husband that works and all that. So she's a real estate agent too. So she hustles,
is she really?
Right? Yeah. Yeah. So she works for an agent, a brokerage here in town, and then does interior design for varying levels of clients. And I'm super stoked that we got her because we got that second Airbnb coming up that we'll need to do something similar to, right? As opposed to like what you and I would do is like hodgepodge all of our furniture we don't want in our house and throw it in there, and for that, for some Airbnbs, that's totally fine. But for this one, I think where we're trying to go, I mean, we've top to bottom remodeled this thing. It's really modern looking. It's in a really hot location. And so you just want that if we're going to maximize the dollar amount because of the location and all that, it just makes sense.
For sure. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, especially because I feel like this isn't necessarily going to be an Airbnb property, but probably more like people that want like short-term stays for like an extended period of time. So like,
Yep.
weeks or months because with its proximity to the hospital and the park and downtown. Whereas like our other one, I think is much more Airbnb potential
Yeah.
because it's like
Yeah.
walking distance to, the downtown scene and the restaurants and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But that
One
should be,
thing one thing that reminds me, we should probably,
yeah.
speaking of that, probably have like an office space or desk space in this thing, thinking in that model with people traveling and wanting to work.
And oh yeah, in
Yeah.
well, I mean that's
In the
that
yeah.
downstairs little nook to
Yeah.
make that it. Yeah,
Just making it functional, right? So that it can go to that type of market, I think is huge.
yeah. Now that's a good point. Like honestly, I think for doing short term stuff, there's definitely different criteria that we have to
Hmm.
look for. It'll be interesting to see how the feedback comes back on this after people use it for a little bit.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and
from
it's different space too, right? Because usually, like, we're pretty good landlords when it comes to long-term rentals. Like, somebody has damage, we fix it right away. We're usually pretty responsive on things, and we have pretty nice units. But like, we don't get a 5-star rating for that, right? We
yeah,
just, they're happy, they stay longer, and that's kind of our rating. But for like the short-term space, especially if you're on Airbnb or something like that, like your rating matters, and so little things matter within that space, and you can get bad reviews for things like, oh, this place wasn't clean. It's like, oh crap,
mhm,
like that's a new system. So
yeah. I mean, I've been guilty of that. Like I left a 4-star review once because the place didn't have a coffee machine like at all, but they had coffee, and that was just rude. I
see,
felt like,
I bought a coffee machine and tea bags for this place, so we should be
yeah,
set on that end of things. We'll
yeah.
definitely have to leave like extra booze there just in case like people get kind of upset, like, oh well, at least there's free beer.
See, we got to be careful, right? Because there's the people that show up that are like, recovering alcoholics, and they're
Yeah,
like, there
yeah.
was alcohol in this unit.
Right.
I
Yeah, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. I guess we'll just try our
know.
best.
Yeah, exactly. So now it'll be an interesting process to figure out. But yeah, the other one should be coming up here pretty soon too. I talked to that seller today. She's gonna be moving out. So
Oh,
um,
nice.
yeah, she said she's already got an apartment rented. She's in the process of moving. She said she'll probably be out in 2 or 3 weeks. But
Nice. Yeah.
how it takes someone 3 weeks to move, I don't know. But something with older people, like that was just like they just take their time. They're so happy to. I even said, like, do you want our guys to come help you move? And she goes, nope. I was like, do you have people helping you? She's like, yeah, one of my friends is. I'm
Oh,
like, okay.
very good.
So
Nice.
I guess I don't know. Maybe this. I've never met this seller. I've never met any of our sellers anymore. But maybe she's super fit and she just, 85 years old, enjoys carrying
Yeah,
couches.
she's from a different generation.
Right? That's
Just like
true.
to work hard.
Yeah. But yeah, it's
Which is
funny.
good
So,
too. I got a angry call from one of our tenants in our flip. So it's more of a wholesale, I guess we'll call it, that we were planning to flip.
hmm
Um, on I think it was Tuesday. I was sitting down in the living room with my daughter, and I'm like, "Who's this number?" I was like, "It's from Spokane, so I should probably answer it." Like,
yeah,
you know how it is in this business. You get so many phone calls, and like,
I know. And
everything's time sensitive, right?
but it's funny because I feel like half the time you just look at the number, even if it's a 509 number, booking number, if you should ignore it or if you should answer it. There's like a spidey
Right.
sense that goes
Yeah.
like, I feel like I need to pick this one.
My spidey sense was ignore it, but I still answered it.
Yeah.
And so I've been one layer removed from this property because we have our project manager kind of working on getting the tenants out and all that. And well, I had been coaching him like, hey, you just need to talk to these people in person. They're an older couple. Like, I don't know if they're a couple, but it's a guy and a lady living in this place. And we've got it under contract to close in December. We bought it in what? We were in Hawaii when we closed on it, didn't we? Like we were like it was like July,
Yeah, maybe.
I
Yeah.
think so, or like we closed on it right before the Hawaii trip,
Yeah.
right? And so, um, we were being nice. It was working out, and then we hired our project manager and told him to kind of take care of the tenants. And he's from a younger breed, and so texting is kind of his go-to instead of calling. Despite me like, hey, you need to be in person, but these are you're trying to kick these people out of their home, right? And they just signed a 1-year lease, and so we were trying to cash for keys them and all that sort of stuff. Anyways, whatever he was doing was just firing them up and getting them mad. And so he finally got my number somehow and called me, and he was really pissed off. But the good thing is I was trying to explain to him the process and just be like, okay, here's the deal. And he was kind of pushing back, and I pushed back, lightly a little bit on some things, like, hey man, like, we have to fix this house. There's some safety hazards because there were some electrical issues and some broken windows.
So to backtrack on that, that's the reason he was upset. So, you don't buy something. Is that we've sold the house, which they're aware of, and we're currently trying to fix things in the house that have been a problem for a while that we didn't fix initially because they wouldn't let us.
Yeah.
Right. And now we are legally obligated to fix it, and they're still not letting us fix it. But this is like pretty major stuff too. There's like electrical dangers. There's like some water issues in there. But
real stuff that we were planning to fix when we flipped it, but they're just being really pushy on us and all this stuff and really upset. And I was like, hey, I get it. Like, it's hard to find a place. And I was like, I can help you out with rental assistance. I was like, I've offered you guys several $1,000s months ago if you packed up and leave, and you'd be in a better position, but you haven't. They're in that situation for a reason. And they're like, well, every place we look at's a dump. I'm like, you live in a dump. Like,
I know.
It's just your dump right now. Like, it's not any, anyhow. But getting on the phone with him, calming him down and telling him, like, here's the deal. And he's like, okay, that makes sense. I'm not mad now. So it's just like, that communication. But I think there's another moral in the story too, with this whole deal that is really just a minor detail, but we listed it. So I listed it on the MLS here in town. And we were just kind of doing it just to say, hey, if we get an offer, like, let's just move. But we get an offer at this price because we were kind of just trying to sell it because we couldn't get the tenants out on time that we wanted to. And we got an offer. What was it, like 30,000 over asking? And our ask was like stupid, right? It was like, nobody's going to pay for this, right? Even an investor, whatever. We had a ton of traffic on it. But when I did the MLS listing, you can select what type of buyers you'll accept. And I always just put all of it just to see. And so FHA, all that sort of stuff, because our buyer is an FHA buyer, right? And a lot of people steer away from that. They're like, oh, I don't accept FHA buyers. I'm like, you do if your FHA buyer is 30,000 over ask with a $20,000 to what we call 22 AD, which is basically if it comes in on the appraisal 20,000, he'll pay for $20,000 below whatever the appraisal is, right? So if they appraise it at 250, he'd pay us 20 grand out of pocket. That's a great FHA buyer, and he wants to move in it, live in it, fix it up. And okay, so all you got to do is pass the FHA inspection, right? Which is like no chip paint, all these little things. And so many people get like kind of, oh, I don't want an FHA buyer because it's a pain. It's like, yeah, it is. It's a longer closing, but I sent some kids out there for $500 to paint the chipped paint. I got an electrician in there for $500 to fix the GFCI outlets and a couple of the electrical things, like they're minor things. You got a window person out there to fix the broken windows, right? Hot water tank straps, $50, all in. So it's really easy. And now because of that, because our other offers were conventional or hard money buyers that were kind of at our initial offer, but it's like, well, let's just go with the FHA buyer. Yeah, there's a risk there. And worst case scenario for us was that we just flip it anyways.
I know we're exactly the same position.
Exactly.
We're still trying to navigate the situation with the tenants. Yeah.
But at least, I guess my point being is at least entertain the offer. Don't say I don't accept these because, and there might be unique situations out there, but like at least entertain it if you're going to list it, because you just never know. And on this one, we had no idea. I mean, our spread on this thing we're going to be like $2,000 into it, like in repairs for this FHA stuff. And like, we're going to have a huge spread on it just because of that.
I think our spread's about 70, 75 or something.
Yeah.
But
and our holding costs have been minimal because the tenant's paying for it all through rent. We might have what are we negative, like $100, $200 on the loan. Yeah. It's not bad.
Yeah. But I know it's been an interesting one. And it's always a tough thing when you're dealing with tenants, because obviously, I'm always very sympathetic with people that are in that situation, because we bought it from somebody that was highly motivated to sell. It was actually with a realtor that was involved in it, but they needed to get out of the property ASAP. So they didn't even list the property. They basically approached us directly and were like, hey, she needs to sell this house like yesterday. What can you guys do? So we're able to bail out the seller, but now the tenants have been living in this property that's in barely not livable condition. It's like, I guess it's like keeping them warm, but that's about it.
Yeah. It's not it's not like we bought worse, but it's not a place that and it smells like smoke. It's really bad. And it's junky.
Lots of it's unfinished. There's lots of dips in the floor and that sort of stuff. But when you're working with some of these tenants, one of the things that's always so difficult is like when they are trying to find somewhere to go. Typically they might not have good credit. They might not have money for a down payment on a place or whatever. And it's just a challenge. Like there hasn't really been a good solution for it, especially with the current like rental and housing crisis. Which always makes the ethical part of this business a little bit in question. But at the same time, like it is like a great neighborhood, and it's like also like the worst house in the neighborhood.
Yeah, it's bringing down values in the rest of the neighborhood, so that there's like a silver lining in being able to do that. And like we've never like thrown anybody out on the street, but it's like you have to sometimes help them. Like you've said this, like with some of these social classes we deal with, like sometimes you have to be there to help them, and sometimes it doesn't feel good right away, but at the end of the day, it's actually better for them, and we've seen that a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and also too, one of the things that we've learned is with a lot of these people, not a lot of them, sometimes with these people, if you're too nice, they'll just take everything that they can get from you. That's kind of how they've gotten into these situations where they're renting these places that they're either not paying rent on or they're paying super, super crazy low prices because the other owners were too nice to do anything about it.
Exactly.
And that's also why the houses tend to get distressed too, is because they've been rough enough with their current owner for so long that nothing's gotten fixed. And then after, a decade of that, the house just goes into sort of despair. But yeah, it's challenging. I mean, especially right now, I feel like every house has tenants because the vacancy rate is so low. So it's just kind of a constant issue. But that's kind of our time. I think it's a pretty good place to wrap up. So I already did my horror story at the beginning of this episode with our abduction. Any good lessons learned horror stories this week, Dan?
I would say like a lesson learned. I don't have a lot of horror stories. I feel like I've gotten over my horror stories for a while, but
we got to get you in the trenches again, man. You're like,
I know where I've systematized some of the good stuff, but anyhow, no, I was thinking about this earlier today as back to our first, stepping into our first Airbnb, and I kind of text you like this random thought, which was like, who's going to take the garbage out? Like, you know what I mean? On garbage day, right? But it's, my point being is it's a whole new system that we're stepping into, and it's like a big system, just like we did with wholesaling. We didn't know, and we kind of built it, and like now we're at where we're at. Same thing with long-term rentals. Like we've got a good system there. We figured it out. We can continue to refine it, but like we know it, we're comfortable with it. This is like we're talking. We've got 2 properties coming up for short-term rentals. These are massive systems that other people have done that we need to be able to replicate. But when you're pivoting a business, like it's kind of almost like a different asset class. Like we got to spin up and learn something new. So like I feel like maybe I went into that a little naive, but now I'm realizing like, okay, like we need to be way more prepared. And we finish these rehabs and we're like, okay, put it on the market to rent. Well, we can't do that right now because we need that system. And so working frantically to get that system in place so that we don't get the 2-star reviews because we were terrible, landlords to our short-term rentals. So lesson learned is just like, as you're pivoting to something new, just kind of going with eyes wide open and understand what that system needs to look like and work on it early and often.
Yeah. Well, I think that's key too, is going into it system minded at the start, which I think kind of comes from our experience having built this business, is that, because I mean, think about like when we did our first rehab, was that like a year and a half ago, first rehab together, and there was no system at all. And how much of a cluster that was.
Both of us talking to the contractor and
oh my God.
Yeah,
it's such a disaster. So I think it's a good lesson though, is to, look at things from that higher view. And then I don't know, lesson from me, I don't know, man. I think my biggest lesson this week was to not count your winnings until the money's in your bank account. Like seriously, you can't get any closer than the guy signing the frickin' documents and getting dragged out of the plane.
So true. You're right. God. Yeah. Because we've had that mistake where we're like, oh, we got this deal, we got that deal. And like, 3 weeks later, we don't have it. But like this one, like you can't get any closer than at signing.
Yeah, for real. So anyway, all right, guys, thanks for listening. Subscribe if you like the podcast. That really does numbers. Like I said, those numbers for our numbers on all the different platforms you guys listen on. You can follow us at Collecting Keys Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. You can follow me at Mike_invest on Instagram. You can follow Dan at InvestorManDan on Instagram. Go ahead and hit us up with a DM on there, and talk to you guys next week.
All right.
Thanks for listening. Please leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And check us out at collectingkeyspodcast.com for tips and guides on starting your own real estate investment and wholesaling business.